Highland Park High School. I'm a counselor, along with my colleagues here who you'll hear from momentarily, Roberto Suarez from Homewood-Flossmoor and Alpachino Hogue from Link Unlimited, community-based organization. Before we get started, just a show of hands so we get an idea of the audience. Could you raise your hand if you're from a high school side? Raise of hands if you're from the secondary or post-secondary side. Okay, and then any other miscellaneous folks out there? A few. Okay, wonderful. So I was interested in this topic. Chino and I were actually on a counselor trip in Maine earlier this fall, and there was about 50 counselors traveling to 3 different schools, and every school we went to, the group of counselors just endlessly asked questions to the institute, the college's administrators and admission staff about how are you supporting marginalized students? How are you supporting low-income students? What do you have on campus to help students who are first generation? And it just dawned on me that while we on the high school side, or myself, I'll speak for Highland Park High School, while we've put a lot of thought into this and how are we helping kids get there, also on the post-secondary side, when they get to the institution, there's a whole nother piece of how are they supported and how does that work continue. So putting this together, that was kind of my inspiration and where I came up with the idea. And I'm going to pass it over here to Roberto, who's going to talk a little bit about how to frame the conversation when we talk about the students.
Thank you, Drew. All right, well, good morning, everyone. How you guys doing? Good. Awesome. So we're going to make this worth your while, and hopefully nobody throws any tomatoes today. All right, so we're going to move forward and talk a little bit about, you see the term at risk. And what I remember this connecting with me, and I'll kind of, for those of you in the back, I'll read this over so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on here. Anybody see this comic strip before? Good. Awesome. All right, so you have a bird, monkey, penguin, elephant, a fish in a fishbowl, a seal, and I believe some kind of dog. And so over here, it's you have an individual, somebody's about to give out an assessment, and so he's thinking to himself and stating out loud, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And I saw this for the first time, and it started giving me a perspective of understanding a little bit what the rules of the game are in education and how things are seen. And hopefully some of you are starting to think about in terms of what students bring to the table. And I think a lot of times when we talk about at risk, I want to kind of talk a little about that and why I'm going to try to shift it over to understand a system of marginalization, okay? And so for individuals, like in this case, I would say I'm probably the fish in a fishbowl, and hopefully you guys could connect with one of the animals, right? And let's say that the system in itself is geared with specific rules, all right? And the rules of the game are, you got to be outspoken, opinionated, extroverted, competitive, articulate, well-resourced, have money, have goals, and then you're going to do well in the system. And that's what the system is based on. So some of these, and this to kind of connect everything together, obviously the fish is not going to be able to climb that tree. And as I go through my presentation, my portion, then later on we'll connect it to a program that we do, each of us run, just to start thinking about that at risk. Who's really at risk? Is the student themselves at risk, or are we placing them at risk? And we'll talk about that. So the language of at risk, as opposed to marginalization, holds individuals, the individual youth, accountable for his or her at-riskness. Instead of the complex social, political, gender, racial, and economic factors that contribute to one's particular situation. I remember sharing with my colleagues earlier and some other individuals yesterday that I think until I got into college admissions, now school counselor at Homewood-Flossmoor High School, and then a portion of my time working at the Illinois Math and Science Academy, it was an awareness that I didn't realize I was an at-risk kid when I was younger, right? Didn't realize that. And then when I first started realizing in the system where I came from, and for me, for those of you who don't know my background, my parents are from Mexico. 6th grade is the highest level of education they received. I grew up in Calumet Park, not a horrible place, but went through some difficult things in my life. And I have two brothers who didn't do well and end up totally different from where I'm at in my life. When we're looking at individuals, I think I was able to do well because I was able to conform to the rules of the game. I did well in school, but I would never say I was smarter than my brothers. Never. If anything, I think they're smarter than I am. But the rules of the game sometimes, it takes an awareness to understand that. And so I question, is the individual at risk or is the system around it putting that individual at risk? And this will kind of help kind of reframe things as we look at some of our programs. So reframing that at risk. The at risk label places students with a viewpoint within a deficit thinking classification associated with not meeting academic norms by failing classes or standardized tests, dropping out of school, and or meeting school exclusion decisions with suspension or expulsion for delinquent behavior. So trying to put this together is basically what you're thinking about is individuals, when they're at risk, we're putting them in a situation where we see them as a deficit. They're coming to us and we need to save them to put them in a better situation for supposedly equitable situations. But once you put somebody in a deficit thinking model, you're putting yourself in a power relationship that you're in control and they're no longer in control. Is everybody kind of following that a little bit? Is this making sense a little bit? And again, people could agree or disagree, that's fine, I'm okay with that. But a lot of this connects with some of the research I'm doing with my doctoral studies and kind of looking at specific factors. Is the structure of the system causing deficits? Or are individuals coming to the stage, to the platform with deficits? A researcher in 2006 explains that marginalization youth with the label of at risk can produce feelings of inadequacy, questioning their belonging and placement at the school. And furthermore, the deficit classification has been argued in correlation with an individual's class, race, gender, socioeconomic status, cultural background, and ability. So just because you were born maybe lower class or you're born into, a situation that might be seen as putting at risk, that itself you had no control on. You're in a position of basically vulnerability in a power relationship within society and yourself, right? So with this, myself, being Latino, being parents who are not college educated, not high school educated, being put in a system and then going to a school and people not understanding maybe my background, frames my mindset, is school a good place for me or not? And I think for me, going back, yeah, I think I did fairly well in school, so I was supported, I was encouraged. But because I was a specific type of learner, it was encouraged. But some students might not have that type of thinking, or it might have a different way of different strengths. So still reframing that at risk, right now there's a movement, this is going more with like theorists favoring the term marginalization in lieu of at risk. Not understanding this phenomenon specifically creates the risk of continuing a self-perpetuating system of marginalization, feeding into a specific theory for Bowles and Guinness, the theory of social reproduction. So depending on what you're born into, you get treated a specific way, and then over time, you're gonna fall into that category over and over. And so the school places an environment where, these rules, specific policies get in place. And so pretty much if you're born rich, and this is a quantitative study, if you ever want to read the book on this theory, it was Schooling in a Capitalistic System. And it talks about basically, depending where you're born, you have a certain percentage of reproducing, becoming the top bracket of income in society or the lowest. And just to kind of summarize one point, if you're born in the top bracket of society and the top 1%, you have 0% to ever really move in middle class or lower. And this is quantified over data, and that's what it talks about in the book. On the other side, if you're born into a situation where you're working poor and coming from the lowest bracket, you have less than 1% to ever get to the top 1% over time. And this is tons of data over time. And that book was published in 1976, but they redid it again, and they found the same results again. So, and it was in a recent journal, actually a couple years ago. So just to kind of, again, reframing that at risk, marginalized, at risk being I'm born at risk, it's my fault to be at risk. or marginalized because I didn't meet the standards given by whatever it might be. And another analogy I could provide would be, I'm not an athlete. Anybody in here non-athletic? Yes, awesome. All right, I love it. I'm just non-athletic. I wasn't born that way. But my family was very prone to athletics, and they pushed it. If you were not good at athletics, you're nothing. And I'm like, okay, I'm nothing. So it's nothing in different categories. So the rules of a game, so if you're not athletic, and the system of the rules is an athletic environment, you're going to be put in a system of marginalization. So maybe in here, I'm looking around, I don't know how many people in here can be an NBA player or an NFL player. And that's another social reality that exists. So one aspect is the school as a social reality and what things are given that are inclined for certain people to do well and other people aren't. And that's where that term marginalization comes from, that the system puts individuals and marginalizes them there to a certain level. So my theory right now is, and where my research is, trying to capture school experience of students who are not meeting norms and trying to get their opinions and understanding the perspective and their social reality on what they see. Do they feel that school is a welcoming place for them? Or has school and the structure of school and the standardized tests already have labeled you that what you're going to do in your future has nothing to do with you, it has everything to do what you're able to produce based on standardized norms. And so what I'm trying to do is, and this has to do tie with the theory of democracy in education. Do individuals really have a choice in what they want for their future, or is it dictated by the rules in the situation you're born in? And so it's democracy taken out of education, and it becomes basically a fixed system where everybody is placed because of wherever you're born, who you are, gender, sexual orientation, and that's what I'm looking at. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Drew, who's going to talk about his program. But again, try to keep that marginalization in the back of your mind as we're talking about this. Thank you.
So 4 years ago at Highland Park High School at a half-day in service, we met all of the counselors together and evaluated our comprehensive 4-year program. And we tried to figure out where are we missing students and where are the gaps within our program. After about 2 hours of brainstorming, we really started to realize a lot of our Latino students, college counseling at Highland Park High School, we begin it at about November of the junior year. And many of our students who were marginalized would walk into their college counseling meetings with a 2.4 or a 2.7 or a 2.8. And as they then, as a junior, realize, boy, I have a 2.4. If I had a 2.75, I'd have a whole different type of conversation here. Or if I had a 3.0, I'd have a lot different options. We started to think, how can we reach these students as freshmen and sophomores? How can we make sure those junior meetings are more fruitful, they have more options, and so we developed the Bridges program. Two of my colleagues, Don McCord and Pablo Alvarez, and I started to work on the curriculum. What we did is we asked every counselor, I believe we have 8 or 9 generalists, we had 8 or 9 counselors identify or invite a handful of their freshmen and sophomores who showed academic promise. One of our original philosophies was we wanted to find students who were somewhat disconnected. They weren't in the band, they weren't on a sport team, they were really still, as freshmen and sophomores, not into the fabric of our high school. And we tried to create a space where they would be connected, get to know more adults, and we could provide this information. So we met twice a month, every other week on Wednesdays. We're on a modified block schedule, so on Wednesdays and Thursdays we have 3 lunch periods, and Don and Pablo and I would run the same program 3 straight times. It was a little work intensive. That was the best system we could come up with within our structure. We sent reminder emails to these students. We probably started with 35 students when we first started, and as time went on, we had probably had a core of about 20, 15 others were in and out from time to time. We were absolutely shameless. The 3 of us were running around the school, knocking on doors, reminding kids the day of. These were normally kids who don't check emails. We would send emails because we felt like it was the obligatory thing we should do, but none of them read their emails. But so we just realized, how are we going to get these kids in the door? We felt like we had a really good message, and they would benefit from it. So we did anything we could for the first year or 2 in order to try to create a following. So We were lucky enough that we have a grant within our district that we applied for with the help of some administrators, and we were approved for a small amount of seed money that got us started, helped us buy pizza for the students, pay a few speakers, have a field trip here and there. And I think one of the greatest benefits that we didn't really foresee with the students who took part in the program was the mentoring and the connections that did happen. The students we started with are now seniors. They're leaving here in a few weeks, and just their ability to walk through the counseling office, the people they know, the offices they can pop their head into when we see them in the hallway, those were the kind of the really phenomenal benefits that we didn't really set out to provide, but ended up being some of the greatest. So the curriculum that we worked with, these were students, mostly first-generation students, whose parents, didn't have at home the reference of what college is, like a lot of our other population at Highland Park. And so we really started with square one. We said, why would you go to college? In no way did we assume that they wanted to or they should, but we tried to talk about why do people go to college. Talked about income, talked about the structure of college, how much fun college is. These kids thought you'd go to college and you'd be in a classroom for 8 hours like you do in high school. And when we talked about, you can go to class and go work out and go work a couple hours at a part-time job and go back to class, their eyes are like, what? What world is this? Well, of course I want, of course, sign me up. No classes on Fridays, sign me up. So just the exposure to them of that world and what higher education really is, was amazing for them. So we talked about really starting from square one. We talked a lot, probably beat them over the head with GPA. And what is this number? People talk about this number. How is it calculated? That led into, obviously, their courses that they're choosing. Why would they take an honors and AP course? At our school, a lot of the students who are marginalized students or Latino population, if they take an AP or honors course, they might be in many cases, be the only African American Latino student in that class. So they're scared of that. And so how do we work with them as counselors in order to encourage them to do that? And what's the payoff? Because that's not an easy thing for them. They're away from their peers all of a sudden. So that was some of the curriculum we talked about. We took 2 campus visits. We went to Loyola University, DePaul University, took the buses down, took a day-long field trip. This was the first campus that many of them had gone to. They didn't realize how beautiful campuses were and the buildings. And I'll always remember we asked them, what was the most shocking thing? And one girl raised her hand. She goes, "There's a church there." I'm a Catholic school guy. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a church there. But they thought, I can't believe there's a church at college. So just their opening of their eyes and their experiences. We did some personality inventories and talked about careers and how that might fit in as well. So a little bit of data on this is for the core group of students who are graduating this year. 77% of the students after 2 years had a GPA of above a 2.7. 44% of them were what we call diagonal movers. And I don't know, does anyone else use that term? Okay, that's a District 113 term. But for a student who is succeeding at their current academic course level, we push them or encourage them to take a higher level. So if they have an A in a college prep course, we'd say, why don't you take the AP or honors level? You might be challenged and you could probably handle that. So 44% of our students were diagonal movers in at least one academic subject, many of them in multiple subjects. 33% of the students decided to attend tech campus. That's one point that I did leave out. We were not pushing every kid to go to college. Our hope was think about life after high school and have a plan when you leave. And if it's college, great. If it's the students at tech campus, 2 of them I know right now are certified nurses assistants. They passed their test a couple weeks ago. So they're going to go to a nursing program. They're both college bound, and they're going to work a part-time job in a hospital now, or in some kind of healthcare facility. So many of the students found that, tech campus exposure allowed me to find an avenue of making school more enjoyable. So that was great. And then 5 of our students were applied and accepted to enrichment programs. So 2 of them attended the University of Wisconsin College Access Program. So 2 of them went there, and 3 of them were accepted into College Bound Opportunities, which is a scholarship program for our seniors. We're evolving at Highland Park, so we're taking what I'm terming Bridges 2.0. We're putting a new name on it, but I want to just call it Bridges 2.0 because Bridges has been my baby. So, one of the biggest hangups that we've had is that we run the program during lunch. And philosophically, we've struggled with the idea that we're asking students to give up their lunch period in the middle of a course. We've gone back and forth, and so what we've landed on is we are going to have in-school field trips for a couple periods a day, and this has been a lot of administrative support. Moving forward next year, we're going to do this during the school day. We're going to alternate the times we meet to excuse the students from classes. Within this, we're going to have a contract. Obviously, attendance when they're not with us is going to be a huge deal, and if they're missing classes at other times, they won't be allowed to come. But that's going to be something we're going to move forward with. We're going to include parents. We're going to have family potluck dinners at the semester. We're going to have awards if your GPA improved. We're probably going to have an award for you with your parents there. And our target group's about 25 to 30 students. So. Yes.
Does Highland Park still have freshman advisory?
Yeah, so Susan asked if we have freshman advisory. We don't. So, Pat, 6 or 8 years ago? 6 or 8 years ago before, this is my 4th year. So they 6 or 8 years ago, they went away with it. Okay. Yeah, so this is the way we were able to get to these students. Right, okay. Yeah. In no way do I want to represent that Bridges is the only way that the counseling department and the School of Highland Park supports marginalized students. So this is a list of programs that we run and various people coordinate them. We have support groups. Pablo Alvarez, Alicia Marguedes, Holly Fleischer, my colleagues run Latino boys and Latino girls support groups where it's all about academic identity. It's all about grit, resilience. We're trying to build college-going cultures in lots of different ways. So if students aren't part of Bridges, they're still getting these messages in a lot of other ways. We're lucky enough to have Schuler Scholars, which is a college community-based organization in our school who supports some other students. We take a group, again, Pablo Alvarez takes a busload of students every spring to 3 different college campuses. He gives 3 days of his spring break to go with these students. So some really tremendous people in our building that work to this end to support the students, and Bridges is one way that we've come up with kind of systemically to try to create that and change the system. So a couple other pictures. These were our field trip to Loyola. We made them all wear nice clothes, and some of them wore suits. So the guy in the front, I made him stand front and center. So all right, so I'm going to hand it back over to Roberto to talk about his program.
Drew, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
Susan was from St. Ignatius. How do you when you identify your kids, is there an application process? Do they have to do it?
No, so there's an invitation.
Okay.
We developed a really nice invite with like somebody did some really nice stationery, so it looked really official. And we just, again, we walked around the school, showed up at their class, pulled them out, said, you don't know me, but actually I take that back. We had their counselor who knew them make the initial invitation. And then we asked them to come to like the first meeting. We had a really big showing the first time, and then it dwindles from there. But there were kids who showed up halfway through, and we would stand out and be like, "Hey, do you want lunch? You want pizza? Come on in." And then kids would come in, and then they'd come back and back. So we were totally shameless. We were interrupting classes all over. So, all right.
Thank you, Drew. So this is my 3rd year at Homewood-Flossmoor High School. And so when I came in, there's a program called College Club. And anybody are my HF colleagues here? Anybody? Dawn, how you doing? Anybody else? All right, so Kathy Fleming, you're in trouble, just to let her know. She said she was going to be here. All right, so just to give you a description of College Academy, College Academy, it's an intervention program sponsored by the guidance office. We don't have an advisory or a homeroom or anything during the day. So our program is more designed to, it's an after-school program. And what we do is we target specific students based on GPA and Explore and Plan scores. So we get freshmen and sophomores. And our target range, what we do is a 1.5 to 1.99. About a third of the class of each year is lower than 2.0 at HF approximately. And so when I was looking at College Club before coming in, they only came in twice. I think they met twice a year and that's it. And there's no strategic way in terms of identification or to show any kind of measurement in terms of any kind of increase or any kind of growth. So I came in a little bit more prescribed and saying that, why don't we target specific groups and not to just do it by, oh, that student looks like they need help, let's get them. Or what, that student, they're a minority, they don't know what they're doing, right? And everybody does it different. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit more of how we do it, right? So, and when I was putting it together and looking at the data, just again, looking at that target group. And when we look at the Explore and the plan, it was basically an average or above. So if a student is scoring at least average or above on this standardized test that's out there, and they're under a 2.0, but with a target of a cutoff of 1.5, we figure, why don't we reach early to these students, let them understand that, A, you're not working up to your potential, supposed potential, right? So what we do is we focus more of a strength-based model. We talk about their testing, that you are really good, and you're actually, wow, you're doing phenomenal. We don't talk about GPA in the beginning and why they're selected. So, and we meet with them one-on-one for that invitation. So the program together is basically targeting this group so they become aware and slowly through a process, so down the line in junior or senior year, they're a little bit more equipped at understanding the process and understand the opportunities, that they're in a better position for opportunities now and they haven't limited them by putting themselves in a big hole freshman or sophomore year. So the goals of College Academy is to raise academic awareness of students in the first 2 years of high school, increase students' GPA to a C average or above by junior year, increase college awareness through motivational speakers, college visits, and workshop discussions, connect students with adult mentors, increase awareness of academic resources available at HF, encourage students to join extracurricular activities, and develop goal-setting skills. So I remember when I was younger and going through school, I had a couple of significant individuals who impacted my life, and I remember that strength-based approach. I don't think I was ever really by specific people I'm thinking about. It was my science, my physics teacher, and also my English teacher, and they really kind of reached out. They said, "Wow, you're a really good student. I love your comments. Why don't you come and join this activity after school?" So by my junior year, I was involved in like 11 organizations, academic decathlon, scholastic bowl, and I loved it. And I think that created a momentum for me. And then connecting down the line, I was sharing with Chino earlier that I was nominated for this one program to go to Eastern Illinois University. So if you're out there, I'm thankful for the programs at Minority Leadership Camp. And it was my first exposure to understand what to expect at the college level. Because I'll be honest, I was a little bit of an over-imaginative individual, and when people were referring to higher education, higher learning, I'll be honest, I was a science fiction fan. I kind of thought that higher education is they're going to talk about in college about how to telepathy, right? And that's what college is about, higher learning, a higher state of learning. And so thinking about it now, I was like, wow, what was I thinking, man? I needed to lay off some of the books and movies I watched. So when I got to Eastern and was able to connect a reality that I was not aware with, it really hit home for me. And I was like, wow, college is a pretty cool place. It's not about telepathy, even though I thought that was going to be pretty cool. And so it really made it real for me. And I was telling Chino, I'm like, I didn't know who nominated me for that program at the time. I just knew I got an invitation. I'm going to go with this. I'm like, I asked my mom and dad. They're like, I don't know, mijo. What's this about? I go, I really don't know. But it looks pretty cool. I'm going to meet students from other schools, so why not? And they go, how far away is Eastern? I go, it's a couple hours. Mijo, I don't know if we're going to be able to get you there. I'm like, well, if you can't get me there, I'll figure out a way to get there. But my mom was able to take off work, and this was also a very difficult part. And if you were late, please raise your hand. I mean, both my parents worked in factories, so you can't take a personal day, anytime you took a day off, you get a point system, and once you get 9 points, you're fired. And so my parents were very hardworking, still are. My dad just retired, and it was a very emotional time for me this past year, because to see my dad retire after 40 years at a horrible place, horrible factory, he's a different person now. And I'm getting to know my dad for the first time, and it's pretty awesome. So if anybody gets that experience, it's pretty freaking great. But anyhow, so at that time, my mom had to take off. She took a point. She didn't want to take that point system because my parents always wanted to be at work, but she was willing to do that. So I got there, had the best experience of my life, and from there, I think it created in my mind that I think college is a good place for me. And then later on, looking at a list, and I keep a lot of things, and I'm pretty organized at home, and I was going through everything, and found out it was my counselor, who I didn't really know when I was at school, but I'm grateful for her, the impact and the door that she opened for me that I wasn't aware of until later on. So these goals and this awareness is trying to make it real for them and connecting and working with the strength-based model. And so we meet twice a month after school in the college room. 2 meetings include college visits. And so in the past, we visited DePaul, St. Francis, Amherst, and Loyola. So we're only in our second year of this going on, so we're still collecting data. So I don't have as much as Drew in terms of where they're going to school. But I did like the approach about not just making it college focused, making it more college and post-secondary, and that's something I'm going to take away from Drew's program, because I wrote down a note. I was like, you know what? It should be a choice if a kid wants to go to college, you know, and if you expose them and give them the opportunities, it's up to them at that point to decide, is this the best place for me? You just have to kind of not sell it, but make them aware of the opportunity, and give them that exposure. Reminders are sent before every meeting. Crucial. For somebody who's doing something after school, it's not something you're required to be at. They're going to forget, some students. Not all, but some are going to forget. So I send the reminder before the end of the day so they get it and they could be reminded. And many of you know this, you're going to get a lot of students if you provide food. And so pizza and drinks are provided. And so we were able to get a budget to be able to run this. And I'm pretty frugal. I'm very financially focused all the time, so I know what the budget is. So majority of the time I go to Little Caesars and get $5 per pizza, and it takes me about 15 minutes to get there. I got a ticket one time, just to let you know. I didn't see a sign that you're supposed to stop at a red light or not turn on red, but I'm never going to do that again. But yeah, to keep costs down, you know, I'm willing to do that. And it's a non-paid position, it's just intervention. You know, for me, I felt people impacted me. I need to pay it forward. I need to give back for schooling that's changed my life. So I'm totally willing to do it. Sometimes people are like, why are you doing that? I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain. Some people are driven by other things in life, and I'm driven by another thing in life. And so topics presented, we talk about academics, we do a GPA calculation, a transcript review. This year we did a mock admission, which was fantastic. The students were assigned to be deans of specific schools. We gave them the standards, reviews, and summaries of students. I think a lot of individuals have done that. And when I started hearing the reflection after, it was like, some students were like, wow, my GPA is a 1.78 right now. If I were to apply right now, I would not get into college, and that's what I want for myself. So the awareness started coming up because they're starting to see some things and looking forward to see what's going to happen. So that's really helpful. And then we also talk about goal setting, time management, and organization as a piece of some of the tools that we talk about. Just to show you some of the findings we're looking at, this is 2012, at the end of 2012. Just to kind of talk this out, GPAs, about 42% were between a 1.0, 1.64. We did go under that 1.5 because we had some students that were recommended to the program. So I did pull them in, even though they weren't invited in the beginning. But I see it, if somebody wants to be part of something and do something, let them in. And so 1.2, 1.64 was 42%. Well, that number decreased to 18% the following GPA, the following semester. And the biggest jump was from 1.65 to 1.93, 48%. Most of those numbers went to a 1.94 to 3.0, 52%. So measuring semester to semester GPA, we started seeing a change. And I thought maybe this was our first year doing it. Like, this might be, lucky, what's going on here, right? And if you go to the next slide here. So we look at looking this as just another graph to kind of lay out everything. This is this last year's cycle, and we had students, a big jump from this. The more students came to the meetings, the more invested they're in it. And so we connected the attendance to their GPA jump. So we had students on average from 1.73 jump to a 2.17 in one semester. And those were students who came to meetings, about 6 to 10 meetings, including the college trips. So we're not doing anything that's rocket science here. It's basically giving them an opportunity, exposing them, focusing on their strengths to be able to give them an opportunity to find out if college is going to be something for them. And some of the best practices that we're doing right now, I would say administration buy-in. I think Drew mentioned it. So they fully support this. If we need more money, I feel comfortable to go ask for more money. We need to fix some things and do some things first before I feel that we need more money. But for right now, the administration buy-in is huge. The strength-based model, looking at things from a strength base. You know, somebody talking to you from where your strengths are, because everybody's strengths are different. So if I can see myself, you know, going to a program and they're talking about athletics, I'm be like, I'm going to shut down, because I'm like, man, that's just not me. Sorry, you know. And I feel one side of my family, I was I don't know. I think they saw me and I was like, okay, he's not good for anything. He's not good at any sport. But moving forward and seeing some of my cousins who I say have Al Bundy syndrome. And what Al Bundy syndrome is living the glory days of high school and how they're good in sports they are, and they're not doing anything with sports anymore. But at one point they scored 4 touchdowns in a football game. So and I pick on my cousin. I go, hey, I remember you used to give me a hard time all the time about me being in sports. You know, I'm pretty happy with my life and where I'm at and what I was able to accomplish. And he goes, I know I give you a hard time a lot. You know what, you were right. I go, that's all I needed to hear. Let's not talk about it again. And let's get a beer and talk about it, all right? So, and then so the college trips, essential, the reminders, and also that food. I would say if you're gonna run a program like this would be essential to run it successfully. At this time, I'm gonna turn it over to Chino so he can talk about his organization and their program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Alpachino Hogue. I actually worked in admissions for quite a while. Worked with the University of Missouri for 2 years on campus, and then I was here regionally for 4 years, and then worked for the University of Arizona in Philadelphia for a couple of years. So I've been on the college side, and I found myself becoming a little bit, not quite a bit actually, frustrated when I would meet students as juniors, as seniors who had aspirations to go to Mizzou, which is a public land-grant institution, somewhat selective but not impossible when you have the right information. And time again, juniors and seniors just did not have the mark. And I thought, well, what can I can talk to you now at the college fair and give you some advice, but what can I do on a more consistent basis to help more students? And so I decided to transition to the college, to the CBO side, and it's been great thus far. So, Link Unlimited, are any of you familiar with our organization at all? Okay, a few. We are in the city. We're at Cermak and State, so just east of Chinatown. We've been in Chicago for 47 years. We have 280 students that are in our program right now. And we really are similar to a lot of CBOs. We really want to make sure that the students that pass through our program are 21st century ready. You know, they know how to make it through, but they're also able to do it right now in high school. So these are a couple of the important pieces for us. I mean, I came across this in a article that I read, and I thought that really encapsulates what we do. We really work to establish that achievement typical behavior because all of our students are low income. And the way our program works is that we actually provide scholarships for students to go to one of 31 private tuition-based high schools in the Chicagoland area. So as 8th graders, students are telling us, hey, I really am interested in going to college and I would love to be able to go to a private high school. We interview the students and then we select them. The way that we're able to provide that scholarship to them is that we match them up with a mentor. So mentors from the business community serve in the best case scenarios for 4 years. So from freshman year all the way to graduation from high school, our students have the same mentor. And so the mentors are, you know, folks who are saying, I want to put in time, I have the money to pay some scholarships, but they really do spend the time with our students. We want our mentors to have at least 2 contacts with our students each month. And these are really busy people. The CEO of Allstate, for example, is one of our mentors. Partners at law firms, Kirkland and Ellis, are our mentors. So these folks are traveling all over the world, but they make it work. Sometimes they're on the plane, Skyping with their students, talking about what country they're going to go to, or telling their students what business deal they just closed. And so that really helps to cultivate the aspirations of our students. And so we found that quality high school experience as well as that mentorship really works very well for us. The academic counseling piece, when our students start with us in 8th grade, the summer after their 8th grade year, they're actually taking summer classes at Fenwick, one of our partnering high schools. The following summer, they'll be at Fenwick taking summer classes as well. The following summer, they'll be at our office in ACT prep courses. And then the following summer, so the Rising Senior Summer is in the past has been a free summer, but what we now do is encourage and strongly suggest, and we're moving towards requiring all of our rising seniors to have meaningful summers. So part-time work, spending time on your college campuses in immersion programs, traveling abroad. I think this year we'll have 10 students that will travel abroad. We have students that will go to Brown and will go far away, but there are students that want to stay close to home too. And so we're always looking to partner with organizations and institutions close by that offer summer programs where students can take courses for credit or without credit, but one, to give them an alternative to just being in their neighborhoods in Chicago. And that's sad to say, but it's almost dangerous to be in your neighborhood in the summertime in Chicago. And so we want to provide them some alternatives to that way. The summer school enrichment is one of the things that the students hate the most, but when they graduate and they talk about the program, that's one of the pieces that they really reflect on, so we know it's important. The tutoring happens, we have a 2.8 minimum, so any student that falls below the 2.8 is required to attend tutoring. We are moving tutoring away from feeling like remedial work and thinking more enrichment, because when students go to college, you sit at the tutoring center, there are students who are having D's and C's who are trying to bring that grade up, and there are students who have B's and A's and want to maintain that grade. So we want to build that culture and that idea for our students in high school, so we're doing some shifting with that. But the ACT prep, I think, is the piece that students probably are just coming off of. All of our students take the April test date as juniors. We pay quite a bit of money and make a pretty big investment. So we're really this year for the first time diving into the metrics and the statistics to see if there's truly an impact besides just the 6 weeks that our students are practicing. This is last year's class. The smiling faces of our students. 13 years in a row, we've had 100% of our students be accepted to four-year colleges, so we're very proud of that. And then this year, we're expecting to accomplish that as well. And they're all over the place. We have 300 students in about 100 different colleges across the country. Just to give you a snapshot of the students that are in our program. So our freshman class, coming in for next year, class of 2018. We just finished that process a couple of months ago, so we had about 391 applicants. You can kind of see the breakdown of it. So these are not necessarily the 4.0 straight A students. We are looking not just at that GPA, but we do know that if you're going to go to some of these really rigorous high schools, you got to have some strong academic foundation. So we do look at that, but we also are looking for students who have that it factor, who are really saying, I want to do this. You know, it's a little bit complicated for me to go home and study when sometimes we don't have lights on, or I have 4 little brothers and sisters who don't allow me to focus. And so we want those life experiences to be used in a positive way, so we won't hold that against the student, but we interview not only the student, but we also interview the parents, because Link is great and we do great work, but if the student doesn't care and doesn't want to do their part and the parents don't reinforce our messages, it's not going to work. So we really do hold everybody accountable in the process. And our students are coming from both public and private grammar schools. Now, in terms of what we do or why we do what we do, I mean, some of you have seen these statistics, but I just think it's really important to think about what's going on here in the state of Illinois. But unfortunately, what's going on here in the state of Illinois is not that much different from what's going on across the country. So these are just a couple of blurbs, and it's really interesting. You're starting to see the research come out to talk about the achievement gap more related to income more than just based upon race. And so all of our students being sort of a double whammy in that they're all African American students from low income families are really dealing with that achievement gap in an interesting way. Students aren't really, we have programs that are in place, but the numbers are not large enough for us to stop our momentum and stop our efforts, and that's why I appreciate you guys in the high school setting being creative about how to do it, and we'll talk about some ways to collaborate here in just a second. But I wanted to bring this out, and I talked about the fact that we have our students at tuition-based high schools. Even at some of these schools, our young people sometimes have a difficult time with the culture, blending in, feeling like they belong, knowing in their head that this student to their right and to their left is paying full freight for their tuition, and they are relying on Link and maybe another organization to pay their scholarship. That for some students, that creates sort of this environment of this stereotype threat, and we want our students to feel very comfortable and to challenge themselves and get involved. And so this year, our senior, Michael Reed, who's a senior at Mount Carmel, actually became the senior class president. He's actually the very first Black student to be class president in Mount Carmel's history. So to me, that not only says a lot about that young man, but now he has changed, I like to believe, changed the way Mount Carmel students view that position and what's possible. So that's what we like to see for our students, because there are sometimes running into teachers or administrators that may not be as supportive as they should for those students. We also, there we go. Has anybody seen this illustration before from Georgetown University? Just a couple of years ago, they came out with some research talking about where students go to college. And I think this is very telling. So 82% of, and this is students who are applying to schools in these categories using the variance selectivity ratings, in those categories who fit the profile. So in other words, have a good chance of being admitted to those schools. So 82% of white students who fit that profile for the most selective schools apply, and typically will enroll in the 468 or so. But what's really scary to me is the percentages of Hispanic and African American students that actually go for it. And so what that tells me is that there's more work that needs to be done so that our students know what their options are. If you decide that a two-year school is the best school for you, we're all about that. If a technical school is the way to go, we're all about that. But we want our students to understand that there's a lot of variety out there, and there for you, the fit is going to be very important. And so this is the conversation that we find ourselves having, even as a scholarship college preparation organization. We still are trying to convince some of our students to really raise the bar for themselves and look for some other opportunities. So I think this is really crucial. It comes from their Center of Education and the Workforce, and I think they have some really great research that comes out of that, so that might be something you all want to check out as well. And of course, you guys, especially I saw a few of you are from the college side, and I think I remember working with CBOs, and there's a lot, and you would love to do a lot, but sometimes the time isn't there, or the CBO may not be as organized, and it's difficult to have a ongoing conversation with a person. So these are a couple of the features of effective organizations. This is in Alpachino's research. This is from Root Cause, this research firm that works with CBOs and not-for-profit organizations and small businesses. And they did a study to look at the things that really are most effective in graduating students out of a CBO, and really the academic piece. So you gotta have high expectations for everybody. And I think that if you find yourself working with a CBO where they are just not expecting their students to do very well, if they are treating their students like they're average and that's all that they can achieve, I think that's a sign that maybe you from your college side can say to them, hey, you know, there are some honors college classes and some other things that your students can be taking. The relationships are crucial. I think that's why our students really enjoy what we do. And things have to be very youth-centered. So it has to be a conversation not just based upon the research or what our board members want us to do, but really what our students want to hear from us. And then in terms of structure, the key, and we're going to talk about this, are those partnerships. CBOs can't do it all. High school counselors can't do it all. College reps, you do everything, really. You're all over the place. But you can't do it all. So really learning how to partner across the table with other folks that are serving your same students is a piece that we're working to get better at. And I think that's a crucial piece of not burning out everybody on your staff. And then an assessment and data piece. That's obviously everybody is really looking into that, because funders are now starting to say, we don't want to know just what you're doing, but we want to know the impact and the outcome of the efforts that you're showcasing. So as you are starting to think about in your high schools or in organizations, CBOs, to get more funding, you got to have the numbers behind it. That's going to be very important. And then as we are collaborating, I think it's very important. I actually went to the NP conference, which I always pronounce NPEA, but I guess it's NP in Minneapolis. It's the National Partnership of Educational Access. There was a conversation about CBOs working with high school counselors. And I think this is important because I see some of my high school counselors that I've worked with here. we are working with the same students and we might have different philosophies. So it's very important that we are talking to each other and having adult conversations so that students don't feel torn. Because if I'm giving the student a college list and you're giving the student a college list and their pastor at church is giving them a college list, the student is trying to figure out, who do I listen to? And so if we all can get on the same page, it makes our united front that much easier to digest for the student that we're already saying is marginalized and may not be as eager and interested in this college access process. We're creating barriers for them without even knowing it, because a lot of times we're trying to, push our agenda or push our ego. So the standardized testing, every school does it. We do it as well. How will we make that work? Can your students come to ours? Can our students come to yours? Just figuring out a way to make that a little bit easier. And those summer opportunities, as we know about them, we have a whole list posted on our website. IACAC has a great list on their website. Sharing that information with your students is very important. And then Naviance. Our students don't want to do our Naviance and your Naviance. They just don't. So I've just started calling the counselors and saying, can you just tell me what's in their Naviance, and I'll just do it. So just trying to figure out if we can just be on a political front and get Naviance to let us get into your system. I think that would be awesome. So help me with writing those letters and those emails. And then I just really want to think about this. I really want you all to look at CBOs as a resource and not a pain. You're busy, and we know that, and sometimes we're calling, asking for information that you think we should be privy to, but sometimes we're not, and I think sometimes we're privy to information that you may not be. So if we look at each other as resources, I think that would help the relationship quite a bit. And then really meeting often, sometimes just over the phone is great, but like at the beginning or in the middle of the summer where things are slow, that's a really great time to link up, to find out what the philosophy is, to find out how your students did that year, what schools were really great in terms of financial aid. That will help the conversations in the fall. I think a mid-fall check was really important. I met with Ashley from Horizons for Youth. We share a student, and she and I would just call and kind of help each other out with that process. So I think that's important to do, and especially if you can, it would be very helpful too if you have CBO students that you know are part of your high school. If you had a designated counselor that served those particular students in that organization, I think it just streamlines the process, and then everybody's on the same page as it relates to Link or Schuler or whatever other organization might be involved. So in conclusion, we're going to have a few discussion points here. Drew, you want to lead this one?
So intentionally when developing the program, we tried to do the CBO so you could hear from Chino's perspective, and then the large public high school where we each have over 2,000 students. Roberto's closer to 3,000, we're at 2,100, and how we've tried to serve the population within our structure. So everyone, you all are sitting there and thought, well, this is the structure of my program or my office or whatnot. And so we just encourage you to try to think creatively on how you can make it work for you. So, a couple prompts, I guess, on the board, but are there questions or thoughts or feedback that we can answer? Yes?
I'm curious what the 2-year high school budgets were for this. I think, we started Avid last year, and to me this is like a modified Avid. I'm thinking this is probably a little cheaper than Avid, too, in case we lose funding.
I think we received a grant for $3,000, and that allowed us to go for 2 years. And honestly, we had to figure out ways to spend it because they wouldn't allow us to spend it on food. So we went to our PTO, who has discretionary funds, and we applied to we ran it. The resources we had were within our office. We had the knowledge. We created the PowerPoints. We had speakers come from the community. We served Fort Sheridan, which is a number of our military students. We had speakers come from there. We just really tried to do it on a low budget way. So $3,000 allowed us to go for 2 years.
Yes, we keep it pretty cheap. I'm going to pass out, I have 3 copies of the annual report. I did one for the year before. I'm updating this one still. This one has our budget, but pretty much $1,000. And our administrators don't like that to go toward food. But when I show them the results of the impact we're able to do, they kind of listen a little bit more. And sometimes with students, you just gotta find out what to do to attract them. And sometimes honey is gonna work better than vinegar. So I'll pass this out. So if you have questions, feel free to look at this.
Okay, Jared?
For both you guys, are you got freshmen coming in, are they hearing the same stuff as the sophomores, or, you know?
Yeah. And that structurally was difficult for us. We did some pullouts where the sophomores, we tried to also treat it as a leadership opportunity too. So as they were sophomores, we were like, okay, you guys are mentors and you did this, so what do you regret about this? Some of the topics they were able to do that, but then also Pablo would take the sophomores someplace else, and we made it work. And we didn't know who was showing up each time. It was an imperfect system, but again, we wanted to keep them there. We wanted to somehow, we talked about supplying like a leadership cord on their graduation gown, which we never actually followed through with on that. But we just tried to keep them around, and they kept coming. So whether it was the pizza or they felt important, whenever we would say a message, we'd be like, "Hey guys, what do you think?" And they'd kind of pipe up and have their say. So it worked. But you're right, we struggled with it every time. How are we going to tie them in when we're really talking to the kids who've heard this for the first time? We tried, because again, the 2 years, like, how can we, while we're doing 101, how can we also make it a 201? We tried to merge topics too. So. Yep.
Do you guys have a set curriculum now that you've done it, or do you shift it by student need, or do you like give any surveys of like what their needs are? Like how does that work with what you talk about?
Yeah, we haven't done the surveys at this point since we're switching our model to meet with them in a different way. We have our curriculum that we worked with for the first 2 years of it. We didn't do the surveys. We are not an ASCA school. I know all you ASCA counselors out there. I just got an email from someone else. Send me your needs assessment. We don't have a needs assessment. So sorry. We do a good job anyways, but we're not ASCA model. So yeah, we didn't do the surveys. It's something in the future we would do though.
Since we're still fairly new at HF, we're starting our curriculum. We have everything like at the framework of it. And I don't know if now Kevin Coy and Brad Kane always make fun of me. They do an impression of me saying, statistically speaking, I do love doing surveys. I love having information. It just helps you to adjust and to kind of modify things. So we do surveys. And right now, basically a lot of what, if I could just make a general statement, and even though I'm more of a quantitative reader, I'm more of a qualitative thinker. And the best way to describe that is qualitative being that everything is complex, nuanced, and should not be generalized for everything. On the quantitative side, there's one thing that works for everybody. So on the qualitative side, looking at surveys and things like that, some of the things that pop up as common themes is it's just a home environment, not having a lot of resources. But the parents want something good for these students, and the students want it. They're just not aware of how to get there. So the curriculum's still, being produced right now. I would say probably our goal, probably in another 2 years, we're going to have a legitimate full program, and we'll see them as they progress up to senior year. But yeah, so the curriculum's still in the works, but the framework is there already.
For the Bridges 2.0, we've developed curriculum for 2 years, so that would answer. So moving forward, we are more structured. This in-service where we developed this idea was, I want to say, in like November, and we kicked this off in February. So throw in your winter break, etc. I mean, we probably met 2 or 3 times, and we would meet to be like, okay, we got a meeting in 10 days, what are we going to talk about? So it was really on the fly, but seemed to work in that way, but we will be more structured moving forward. Yep.
Do you guys do like any skill building to help them prepare for when they do get to college, or is it more experiential and just getting to the college?
We don't. It's a great idea. Yeah. I'm going to steal Roberto's notes. Yeah, Cato.
What have your interactions with parents been like in involving them?
Originally with Bridges, we didn't do a lot. That's where, with our new program, we're going to have the potluck dinners in the evenings once a semester to try to have a reward program where we want to get the parents tied in. But when we first started Bridges, we didn't have a parent perspective. I mean, I think with naturally, we hope that there was more conversations at home, and I think it happened because the results of their decisions post high school now are good, better than hopefully they would have been. So yeah, but we didn't have it originally.
And maybe those parents then came to the junior appointment.
Yes, yeah. Well, and many of them were accepted into one of our scholarship programs where they had a mentor. It's not as structured as Link, but college-bound opportunities within our school, they're all required to do those things.
Right.
So yeah.
Just real quick, we don't have a parent component right now, but we have one of the counselors that's working with me that's really pushing for it. And the idea that we're going to form later on is to have a completion, almost like a certificate at the end of the year, and inviting the parents to award them for coming in for something that for our program is voluntary. They don't have to be at. So it's a component we're looking at, but we're not there yet.
In the back.
I saw that you accept the students in seventh and eighth grade, or the application process starts around that time. You also accept students around sophomore, junior who are already in high school.
For Link, we only accept students in 8th grade. So we do some high school transition work with them. It's been on a small scale. We're trying to make that a little bit more robust. But so students will apply in 8th grade. Our application goes live in like August and usually is due mid-November. And research is showing us this, we know that we got to get our students a little bit earlier. And because it's a tuition-based high school, if the student isn't already at that high school and trying to transfer into Fenwick, for our population of students, that would be a really tough transfer. So we really want them to start at that high school and then finish.
Chino, you said that you wish the high schools would share their list of schools that they come up with to you. We don't know even if the kids are using a link or even a private consultant, so we can't share that list. We share it with the kid. Hopefully the kid would bring it to you. So
I meant that we share our list with you guys.
Okay.
Because when you are dealing with low-income minority students, because that's the business that we're in, we know schools that not so much just about getting in, but schools that will have financial aid packages to make it affordable. So when I say share that list, I mean not just for the students who might be involved with Link, but any student that looks like a Link student could potentially benefit from those resources. So I think we as a CBO should do a better job of letting you know that information.
Sorry, the 8th graders, do they have to be Chicago residents?
And you're thinking maybe somebody in Indiana or something?
No, suburbs.
Oh yeah, no, they don't have to be. Yeah, we link them with the mentor. We do a lot of, we look at a lot of different points, but the location, geography is one of the pieces that we take into account. We do have some mentors that live, very far north and some that live very far south. Our furthest southern high school is Seton Academy, and then furthest north, I think might be maybe Loyola might be as far north, unless I'm missing something. So students can live anywhere, just as long as they can get to their high school. Yeah.
Thank you all very much. If you'd like to come up, I'm happy to share PowerPoints or the curriculum that we have. If you give me your email, I'm happy to send it out to you. And thank you to Dave Shaffron for being our manual clicker, which I forgot at home. And thanks a lot. Enjoy the conference.